Hey Bourbon family, Whiskey Phoenix here today, not with a daily bourbon review, but I thought I'd kind of do a Bourbon History 201, so to speak. I know I spoke a little bit about it last week in an informational video, but one of the things in a comment that was made was where the origin of the name bourbon came from. I did a little more digging, and it actually turns out that it's thought to have come from either one or two sources, so to speak. Bourbon County, Kentucky, named in honor of the French House of Bourbon for their support during the American Revolution, or I found this fascinating, Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Everybody's very familiar with that if you've ever been to New Orleans. That's kind of where Kentucky whiskey became popular and eventually gave the drink its name. So, I mean, I guess it can go either way. Either way, we all know what good bourbon is, and we know that it has to be 51% corn, aged in new charred oak barrels, and no artificial flavorings or additives. But I just found it interesting that the origin of the name kind of has like this, either Bourbon County, Kentucky, or Bourbon Street in New Orleans. Either way, like I said, for me personally, I found it quite interesting. The other thing that continuing on with that is on another site I was looking at. I always have to look up because I can't remember the shit. Is the suffix bourbon owes its origin to the support of the French in the young nation's war of liberation against the English crown. So here's another source from whiskey.com saying that after the victory of the British troops, the county and the border area between present-day Indiana and Kentucky was named Bourbon in honor of the French royal family out of gratitude. Originally, the whiskey from this region bore the word bourbon on the barrels, which quickly became a seal of approval as it was characterized by its outstanding quality. So, it seems like more people lean into, the whole bourbon coming from, that French royal family, so on and so forth. It goes on to say that over time, the term bourbon became increasingly synonymous with whiskey from the entire region, even though the original Bourbon County changed several times over the following centuries. Today, there is a county east of Lexington that bears the name Bourbon, even though no distillery is active there anymore. So, and then a decisive milestone was reached in 1964 when the U.S. Congress passed a resolution that defined the conditions under which whiskey could be labeled as bourbon. And that was covered in my Bourbon History 101 video that I did last week. So, again, it seems like a lot of it just kind of leans more into bourbon came from, the French family and so on and so forth. The other thing I found interesting in this article is they talk about the emergence of today's distilleries, and the distilleries that still exist today are linked to the legendary names of American whiskey pioneers and their dynasties. For example, the Old Pepper Distillery, now known as Labrot and Graham, is reminiscent of the first great scientist, Dr. Crow, while the Beam family, now in its 7th generation, personally looks after and develops its whiskeys. Around 1850, traditional pot stills dominated, producing a few hundred to 10,000 liters of alcohol in single distillations. This changed fundamentally with the advent of continuous distillation columns. The industrial production of large quantities became possible and laid the foundation for the optimization of whiskey production. By around 1900, these developments had led to the high-quality standard that we value in bourbon today. So again, as a newbie to all this and not really knowing the history of it, I really enjoy kind of taking myself down these rabbit holes of, I guess you could say, the origins of bourbon, or like I said, bourbon history. You know, we'll call this one 201, so to speak. Because I just don't know a whole lot about it, you know, to be honest. I mean, this article was very fascinating. And I got this off whiskey.com. They talk about it during the First World War, Prohibition and Prohibition whiskey. I just found it all really fascinating. I also found fascinating that I found out the first known advertisement, let me correct myself, explicitly using the term bourbon appeared in a Kentucky newspaper in 1821. I was just like, whoa, that's really cool to know. So yeah, without, going into it too much more, just a little more history facts that I came across doing a little bit, deeper dive for myself. And it's like, you know what? I'm not going to be able to get around to a daily review today. I'm heading out with my brother here in a couple of hours. We're going to go meet up with some former co-workers of his and hang out with them for a little while. So I knew I wouldn't get around to a bourbon review today. So that's what kind of took me down back down the rabbit hole of bourbon history, as I, just decided to look into it. And it's like, this stuff's kind of fascinating to me. Maybe other newbies out there like myself might find it fascinating as well. So yeah, there you have it for today. No, I don't have anything to toast with this one. Like I did in some of the educational videos last week. I just decided to keep this one more, I guess, straightforward and trying to keep it as simple as possible. But in the meantime, if you enjoyed this, let me know. Some of you more seasoned bourbon TikTokers, if you guys have some history tidbits and that you learned along the way that you can pass along, that I will probably find very fascinating, drop them in the comments for me. As a reminder, in my bio is a link for the Hang Light gummies. Go check it out. They're great at preventing hangovers. I haven't had a hangover since I got them a couple months ago. Not sure what the rest of the week is going to look like. This is a holiday week, so I know people are going to be busy. Myself will be busy. I've got things I've got to start preparing tomorrow for Thanksgiving, but I'd still like to try and at least get on and do a little something, because I love you guys, and I love trying to create content that you all enjoy. So if you are partaking today, please drink responsibly, and I'll see you in the next one.